Greetings, dear viewers! Today I'll attempt to design some characters from popular fiction, solely based on their book descriptions. And guess who on earth I just drew, as a little bonus to annoy myself. You're of course invited to guess along, and make a fool of me in the comment section for missing obvious characters. Since I'm not quite forgetful enough to pick out character prompts to then guess myself, a good friend of mine did all of the heavy lifting with searching for a sign prompt. It's my pleasure to introduce to you J.R.R, who finally presented her role as the main commenter.
Hi! It's great to be here. I'm so excited. Also, did you just call the prompt searching heavy lifting? I'd much rather call it a lot of fun. I actually can't wait to read all those descriptions to you and to see your puzzled face.
Then let's get started, shall we?
So, I have for you the most beautiful woman in 100 years.
That's a bold statement.
She is about 20 years old. She has autumn-colored hair that has never been cut. She has shining white skin as fresh snow.
It's Snow White, guys. Case closed.
Yeah, with autumn-colored hair, sure. Last off, the shining features of her face betray a knowledge of suffering.
Dang, trauma. But it's a pretty way to word it.
I mean, disclaimer, I translated that. Thanks a lot for the compliment, but...
Well! Okay, no, I have to guess. Most beautiful woman in 100 years. It could just be a hyperbola. It could just be someone overstating something. It could also mean our protagonist actually has lived for 100 years.
Could also just be, you know, a narrator that's not the protagonist that has knowledge of things.
Shining skin white as fresh snow is such a cliché thing to say. Also, people that are like that pale, summer days must be an absolute nightmare. Who could it be? Who could it be? Have I read the book?
No.
Should I know the book?
You probably don't.
Well, the odds are stacked against me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. As I understand it, it's quite famous in America, but not over here in Austria.
Can you tell me what the original language is, since you didn't find it in English? Too much.
It's actually English. I think I just don't own an English copy, and the library didn't have it. The library, I think, didn't have it in German or English. Just not a thing over here.
So, comments, please save me on that one. I will try to guess the character indirectly. The shining features of her face betray the knowledge of suffering. That, I think, tells us the most. A hint of tiredness or weariness than an actual mark of anything that would happen to her, so it seems more like invisible trauma, I guess. I don't know, it's weird. I could interpret a lot into the 100 years if I took them literally. But outside of that, it's very standard pre-description of her.
I'm kinda curious about the autumn-colored hair. I wonder how you're gonna interpret that one.
I was thinking similar to autumn leaves, like reddish brown. Maybe slightly with hints of different colors, some hair on that uniform in color. Maybe if I go somewhat cartoony, we could also shape it interestingly.
Ooh!
And now I'm getting your hopes up. I will postpone the guessing once I've got a better grasp on her character after I drew her. So yeah, you can already see the speed paint running in the background. The hair is pretty much what I told J.R.R I would do. The coloring will follow shortly. For the rest of the character, I noticed that we didn't have a setting and also no reference of what clothing she's wearing, so I struggled a bit with what I should give her to wear. So in the end I kind of just went with a not very time-specific dress. I think you can make an argument for a lot of different time periods that would be somewhat accurate. Honestly, it's a little bit uninspired, but whatever. The dress is not the focus, so I try to make it unremarkable. The hair, however, is very much the focus. I braided it up because being about 20 years old and having never cut your hair is the hair could be very much about 3 meters or something. If you don't put it up somehow, it just won't drag on the floor. So it's very Rapunzel style, but just, I don't know, it's a good way to work with long hair. I put some bows in it just for visual interest. And then I struggled forever with the colors of everything that wasn't her hair. Yeah, you can see I've struggled what color exactly to give it. But I've leaned very heavily into the autumn theme till now, so I thought I wanted to lean more into the winter theme we got with the pale skin like fresh snow. Which then also made me put the entire character in a wintry background. And now she kind of looks like some sort of last spirit of the fall season that survived into winter or something. I don't know, at least that's the vibes I got while drawing. and it's probably extremely inaccurate to what she actually is, but I have no idea what the character is. That's the vibe I gave her, some slightly supernatural, otherworldly feeling. We'll have to see how much I messed up. For the pose, I kind of wanted her to protect a leaf, since I felt like it could fit with the hint of sadness theme we were going for, since it's the last leaf in winter. Whatever, you probably get it, But we'll see what J.R.R. has to say to it, because I have no idea who that is. I've just created a new character, I think.
Okay, well, that's kinda not really close, but I think she actually wore a white dress in canon later.
I knew that light blue wasn't completely off. It looked good with the hair.
Nice. So, this character is Buttercup from The Princess Bride.
Was thinking about if one character is from The Princess Bride. I didn't expect that one, but, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's The Princess Bride herself, basically.
Why did she never cut her hair? Oh, because it's like a bit of a fairy tale parody, so...
Yeah, basically. Also, she's like, in the beginning of the book, she's young and doesn't care at all about being beautiful, and then she falls in love and finally decides that she wants to be beautiful now. And I think that's when she first thinks about maybe cutting her hair.
But no autumn spirit, last remains in winter type stuff going on. The background is very far removed.
Who cares? The next character is a tall woman who is severe looking. Her black hair is drawn into a tight bun. She wears square glasses and an emerald cloak.
I actually have a very good guess for that one.
I kinda expected that, it's one of the more obvious characters.
My guess is correct that it's Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter. I think you know that. Did she have an emerald cloak? I feel like green would fit her, and then I think about the books and the weird house color combinations, but I think the books actually did very little in the outfits. That was more like a movie thing. Despite my slight reservations about my guess because of the house colors, I'm still very convinced that it's Professor McGonagall, which I don't know. I wanted to draw her a little bit more not older looking, but at least somewhat middle-aged, and then I just didn't. She looks way too young, in my opinion. But whatever, maybe it's her at the start of her teacher career or something. Maybe it isn't McGonagall at all. For the general design, I'm not completely happy with it. It feels like to me that I didn't really strike the right balance between detailed and simplified shapes. So I went into it in post and edited a few things, so if the finished product looks a little bit different, that's why. For the cloak, I really leaned very heavily into the emerald theming, because while it probably mostly just referred to the colors, I decided to shape the entire cloak like one would cut an emerald. I also gave her heeled shoes, mostly just because I thought if it was an animation series standpoint, it would be funny if she herself was already really tall and then she also wore shoes that made her even taller, so she's just towering over everybody. You can see me fighting with the colors, because I wasn't sure how green I wanted it to be, because I didn't want it to be very Slytherin green if it turned out to be McGonagall. So I went for a more bluish green, which a few emeralds have. That's an accurate color according to Google. I also thought a lot with what she should wear under the cloak, because I didn't want it to be a dress for the most part, because the cloak itself already made a very strong silhouette, and I wanted a very slim silhouette inside of the cloak silhouette, if that makes sense. I gave her a blouse that's very high-closed, since that, I feel like, underlines the stern character we are going for, hopefully. Yeah, and outside of that, I thought a while with the background. I don't know why I placed all the characters in the background. They're very rushed, and I have to put something behind them, I suppose. Yeah, I guess the most outstanding thing is the shape length of the cloak. Outside of that, not really much to add. Yeah, and then I added some sewing patterns and an actual belt buckle because it felt too undetailed. And here she is. Let's see if I will eat my words, or if it's actually McGonagall.
Oh, wow.
I don't like the pose, but that's beside the point.
I mean, no, that's actually great. You guessed it was McGonagall and you still... First things first, yeah, of course it's McGonagall. You're totally right. It's Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter. But still, this design is so unique, you know? It doesn't look at all like McGonagall in the movie, and I always love seeing interpretations for Harry Potter characters that are so far off from the movie, because it reminds me that, yeah, there's actually another way of imagining those characters than the movie interpretation.
Well, thanks for the compliments, I suppose.
You earned it, you guessed correctly. For this character, I have a setting for you. This is early 19th century. This character is a comparatively young-looking man in his late 30s. He is a gentleman with a fine air and noble look about him.
Obviously, the gentleman has a noble look. What are we surprised about right now?
I don't know, it was just every single page of this book was like, yeah, he's so noble and he's a gentleman, so I thought we'll throw it all in here. He is tall and upright.
Oh god, he has posture, that's terrifying.
And he wears thick leather gaiters.
I think you have to explain to me what gaiters are.
I had to Google that. As far as I'm informed now, those are these things that you put over your shoes in bad weather. But you better just Google a reference yourself.
Yeah, I will Google a reference, but why is that the only article of clothing you're specifying? I guess it was raining when the description happened.
Actually, I'll tell you that much. His clothing wasn't described at all, but he once fidgeted with those gaiters in a scene.
He's fidgety, that's important.
It was one scene, like...
Oh, okay. I thought we had something. For like a split second, I heard gentleman, and my mind went back to Dr. Jekyll, but I know that he isn't in his 30s. And also the rest of the description didn't happen. It's not him.
Nightshade just can't stop thinking about gothic novels.
No!
At all, ever, for eternity.
I'm sorry, like, what else am I supposed to think about?
I don't know, books.
Those are books. Okay, I will ask again, have I read it?
No.
That's extremely unspecific if you haven't read it. You could only really guess it about, like, yeah, I remember that style of describing things, but everything else is extremely generic.
Be careful what you say, you may offend fans of this character.
Maybe, like, the good part of the character isn't his design, but his character.
I won't deny that.
I feel like it's one of those more historical novel things, not in the sense that it's, like, about history, but it's a bit older. Like one of those classics, I'm talking about an entire family novel. Those generational things, but I absolutely have forgotten the names of all of them. So I can't really make a guess, but I think that's the style we are working with. And the style I worked with while drawing was just early 19th century. I googled some references and put them in a classic style code of that era. And of course the gaiters. They're apparently different sized gaiters, but since they are such a staple of the description, pretty much the only clothing article we have, I decided to give him some of the big ones. Outside of that, does he look like he's comparatively young for being in his late 30s? I don't know, I'm struggling with ages a lot. But yeah, outside of that, mostly just a very classic historical drama character. I put a little bit of yellow in there with a waistcoat he's apparently wearing under his coat. And of course the cane, the top hat, all the good stuff. Just a nice, distinguished gentleman, nothing too remarkable, as it should be in those times for a distinguished gentleman. And I made him relatively nice looking, since he sounds like a nice guy, I suppose. The background is relatively basic, just a wallpaper based on the pattern on his waistcoat, and some paneling at the bottom. I would love to have paneling on my walls, but that's beside the point. I'm still struggling to see who the character could be. A part of me thinks maybe from Pride and Prejudice, because the characters in the book aren't that heavily described, but it's a long time since I've read the book and I don't really remember a lot of the ages, so I won't commit too heavily on that guess. But I suppose it could be one of those characters. Oh well, we'll have to see what J.R.R. has to say.
Oh wow, he looks so cute. You weren't that far off. It's not Pride and Prejudice, but it is a Jane Austen novel, being Emma. And this is Mr. Knightley, Emma's love interest.
I mean, yeah, his description did sound like a love interest.
This could literally be Mr. Knightley just walked out of the book.
To be fair, I don't think that's a book that has a lot of illustrations, so not a lot of reference.
No. He has a bit of a farming vibe. He's like a upper class farmer guy.
Oh,
so
the rich farmers, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why he wears gaiters. I will say, as far as I know, a lot of people have a crush on him.
What?
Let's go. Are you ready for the next character?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Sounds good. So, this is a tall man who has about him an air of high nobility.
Could be a high noble, he could also just look like one, I guess.
He is stern with a touch of sadness. He has a pale face and bright grey eyes. And he wears a green hood, green gauntlets, and a sword at his side.
Okay, it was somewhere very different till now, but alright. So a green
Yeah, the clothing comes kinda unexpected, doesn't it?
green gauntlets, what are they made of?
I don't know.
Because, like, there are no green metal. That's a lie. There are metals that look green, but I wouldn't make gauntlets out of them.
Wait a second, what do you think gauntlets are?
Gauntlets are usually a type of glove, in my mind.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So why be made out of metal?
Usually I feel like gauntlets are more used for, like, armor-type gloves, and then gloves are used for normal-type gloves.
Okay, fair.
That's what I, like, connect with gauntlets versus gloves. Because why wouldn't you say glove?
I just wrote down what the author wrote. I see where you're coming from. But guess now.
He seems like he's in denial of his depression. He has pale grey eyes that's like zero characteristic at this point. Everyone has them. Sword, hood, that all feels like it's been a while. Nothing really jumps out to me. There's like some descriptions that just scream a certain character. Guess there's a bit of character in there, but I can't really connect it with any fictional character that already exists. It feels more like the new D&D character description of someone than like... Not like in a bad way, but...
You can just draw first, then guess.
Okay, alright, we'll put it off for now. Thanks, past recording me, for putting that off, because I'm none the wiser. But oh well. I'll be frank, I don't really like that one. I looked at a lot of medieval inspiration, which you will see once I start coloring, since the medieval times were actually quite colorful. For the character himself, I went for like a knight approach, like he's a knight or something, since that was the job of the nobles at some point, theoretically, if they would do that job to protect the rest. So it would give him the air of nobility and explain why he has a sword. The gloves, I went like green gloves under armor gloves to kind of combine the two ideas. And then gave him the green hood with some different green toned edges for the flair. Like I said, medieval times had a lot of patterning, a lot of coloring to show to which king you belong or lord you belong, stuff like that. I made the sword very fancy. There's not really any reason for why it's wing themed. Just to hammer home the point is you're noble and maybe has a lot of money. Probably not that time accurate. I don't know when smithing became that advanced. But like I said, I don't really like it. I think I could have done a better job, but you know, you do what you do, and at the end, I didn't feel like redrawing the whole thing and just stuck with what I had. For the character himself, my guess would be maybe a character from The Princess Bride. Is that the right time? But that's not really based on too much. I haven't read that book, so that's the guess. If it's wrong, what you gonna do?
Oh wow, he looks threatening.
I know it was the sword is at his side, but the poses kind of got boring after a while, so I wanted to put it up.
I like it. This guy definitely needs some scary illustrations of himself, because he's often portrayed as this very soft guy anyways. This is Faramir from The Lord of the Rings.
I will have to say, at least yellow fits him. I feel like yellow is a good color for Faramir.
Tolkien apparently couldn't quite decide about Faramir's colors. Sometimes he's clad in various hues of green and brown, and then again he's like all in green, and I'm like, that's not possible simultaneously. So I just gave you the descriptors for the items of clothing that were explicitly green. You know, he has a little bit Robin Hood vibes.
Yeah, to be honest, I also felt that while drawing.
I think that's fitting. His first appearance in Ithilien feels quite Robin Hood-like.
Fair, fair. At least I don't feel so bad now about the fancy wing sword, since that feels a little more fantasy. The rest of him really does.
This sword is actually so fitting for, like, the Gondorian son of the steward, because their soldiers actually have wings on their helmets. You nailed it with the sword.
I just subconsciously knew.
Okay, setting for this next one is early 17th century.
Early 17th century, alright, that's quite early.
This character is a tall and well-made woman in her 20s. She is of noble appearance and superhuman beauty.
Okay.
She has long, light blonde curls, falling in profusion over her lovely round shoulders. She has a pale face as polished marble, with black eyebrows and large clear blue eyes of a strange brilliancy that are burning as if of flame.
Black eyebrows? That's weird with the blonde hair.
Yeah, it is.
Not judging, but it sounds like she dyed it, but I think hair existed relatively long, so I guess she could have dyed it.
I don't know. She wears a robe and hat, and has a fan and a ring with a magnificent sapphire encircled with brilliants.
That sounds expensive, no wonder she looks like a noble.
And she is repeatedly described as a lioness, tigress, or panther.
Big cats are oft kind of tied to elegance, I guess. So, have I read the book?
Yes, you have.
Early 17th century. It's definitely not a Jane Austen book then. I don't know why for a second I thought it's a Jane Austen book. Like, it doesn't really sound like the way she describes people. But like for a second I thought about it.
Like, not at all. Jane Austen is like, just imagine what they look like, I won't tell you.
What book actually is in the 17th century? The Count of Monte Cristo is later?
I don't know. Not that far off, I think.
But it's also not Dumas' style of describing characters, I believe. I mean, he described a few expensive things. I think that's somewhat his style, but
he is just expensive.
He just likes expensive stuff, alright? His characters like expensive stuff, but the rest feels not really like his style, I think. I haven't read a book of his in a while.
Oh, you may need to ponder while drawing.
So I pondered while I drew, and have to say, past me, why did you say it isn't the more style? I still agree it isn't the style of the Count of Monte Cristo, but the Three Musketeers is right there. A relatively certain guess that it could be Lady de Winter, if I remember correctly her name. That feels like a character that could be described like that, and the time frame fits also a lot better than the Count of Monte Cristo. That being said, the clothing is interesting in the early 17th century, and it's also not very consistent from the sources I've glanced over. The thing that surprised me the most is the fact that her hair is described as falling onto her shoulders. I don't think that was that typical for women older than teenaged. I could be wrong, I'm not very knowledgeable about the 17th century, but I know that at least in later times that was kind of unfashionable and not really a thing that adult women would do. Outside of that, there was also a lot of difference in the way the dress is cut. Like if it's some crinoline tile underskirt thing, then have it more volume, or if it's just straight down. I went for straight down mostly to accentuate the fluffy collar thing around the neck, and also put the hair on top of it. It kind of forms a lion type mane, I suppose, to get the cat theming in. Outside of that, I read somewhere that black, like completely black tied clothing, was quite in with richer folks, since it was very expensive to actually get a true black color. So I made the entire dress black and now pretend it's a reference to the panther theming. I made a slight pattern on the dress, somewhat shaped like paw prints. It's not very obvious, but some pattern had to go there. That was about where I had the theory that it could be Lady de Winter, and I'm like, well, theming her after lighter colors would have made sense. But I've committed to the black already, so it's stuck. I don't like the hat confuses me. But outside of that, I'm relatively happy with how it turned out. I apologize that my drawing program lowered the quality of the pictures by such a degree. It looks fine in my files. It doesn't look fine in the editing program. I have no idea what's happening right now. I think I've made the canvas too small. Why it looks fine in my files then is a mystery to me. But oh well, I'm very convinced who it is. Let's see if I make a fool out of myself.
Ooh,
Milady.
I'm gonna trust you that this is very period accurate.
Well, I didn't really do a lot of research, but fine, I suppose.
Also good news, you didn't make a fool out of yourself. This is Milady, who also goes by the name De Winter, from the Three Musketeers.
At least know some of the books I've read. That's encouraging.
I had to cut out so much from her description because she is described in so much detail. I kinda suspect that Dumas was just writing this book over a long period of time and he kinda forgot that he described her as blonde when mentioning black eyebrows, I guess.
To be fair, Dumas, I think, wrote publishing in a magazine like a lot of authors did. And he was notorious for writing a lot of pages in a very short time. So it would make sense that a lot of quality checking if there are inconsistencies in the book wouldn't happen.
Who cares? It's now a fancy design element. Let me see. You guessed 2 characters correctly. And you also guessed that Mr. Knightley was a Jane Austen character. So that means 2.5 out of 5.
50%, I passed the exam. Let's go.
Congratulations.
How many did you all guess correctly? Let us know in the comments. And until next time, have a great week. See ya!
By the way, a like would be very much appreciated. Don't tell Nightshade I said that. They're way too humble to ever ask for such a thing.
Bruh, yeah, it's a lot now.